We're closing this season of High Flyers in STEM, Greatness Has No Gender with Medtronic, where life-saving innovation meets unwavering inclusion. Catherine Clery and Anne Grealish reflect on their journeys, the power of mentorship, and how Medtronic is shaping a more diverse STEM landscape. This isn't just an ending, it's a call to action. Thank you to our sponsors, Finero, a multi-award winning company that specialises in financial success for contractor, freelancers and solopreneurs. Thank you for joining me today, Catherine and Anne. Thanks so much for coming, and we have a quick chat about Greatness Has No Gender and your journey, and a little bit about what's got you to be leaders in your business today, and some good points, obstacles, some things we can learn from your journeys, and we'll have a chat about some of those experiences. And if I start with you and ask you a little bit about how you've come to where you are today, and if you can tell us a little bit about your journey and what's got you to here.
Thanks, Megan, for welcoming us here. It's great to be here. So I started in Medtronic as an operator, so I worked on the line. I started on evening shift, and to be honest, at the time was because Medtronic had a great reputation locally. Two of my sisters worked there, so I was delighted to be able to get a position there, but it probably in my head was only going to be a short-term thing. I had done computers in college and it didn't really fit with that, but when I got into Medtronic and understood about the products and what they make at the time, and still currently, we talk a lot about the patient and being a mission-driven company, and that really resonated with me, and it was something that I felt like this is a place I could build a career. So starting as an operator on the line, I really enjoyed my work and started to advance and became a supervisor, and then identified there was a need for me to do further education. I would have talked to my manager, and she encouraged me and said, I think you can do this. So she really supported me. And through Medtronic, I returned to do a degree in commerce within University of Galway. That was part-time, so it was tough at the time. I had a small child. So,
wow. And continued to work full-time?
Continued to work full-time. They sponsored me to do it, but they also supported me in, helped me identify projects that I could do for college that would also benefit work, and I had a lot of mentoring and coaching, and I had a lot of people in front of me as well, which I think is helpful. There was my manager at the time and other females, actually, not that it was a female thing, but there was other females that I worked with that had done the same course before me, and they were able to help and give a lot of guidance to me as to what might work. So then, I advanced from supervisor to a senior supervisor, and then I became a production manager over one of the manufacturing areas, and then I had changed to a number of shifts and done a number of different products and a number of different buildings. And I suppose I was looking for a bit of a change, and an opportunity came up to do a program manager program in Medtronic. And I, applied for that and was successful. And from there, then I was offered an opportunity to step into a strategy role globally. I took that opportunity and have not looked back since. So that's where I am now. I'm a senior strategic planning manager, and I work globally out of Galway. I have a role within the central region in America, and also then I do some support for strategy in Ireland.
Brilliant. Yeah. So not the conventional route, but absolutely got you to where you are today. Yeah. And I suppose real obstacles from raising a family to going back to full-time education while continuing to work. So I'm sure as being mentored, you'd equally mentor other people that are going through that journey at the moment as well.
Yeah, I see that's really important, that sometimes you can't see your own ability. At different times in my career, people have came and said, would you consider this role? And I was looking back as that girl who started at 23 in Medtronic. I never thought that I'd end up in a manager position. I never thought I had that ability within me. It wasn't a one-step thing. It was numerous steps, and I took opportunities that were given to me. I worked hard all throughout, always tried to do my best that I could. So I think it's really important that we pass that along. And I actively, have a lot of connections. As I said, I worked in every building. I worked across every shift. So I know a lot of people, and anybody that comes to me and says, Anne, what can I do here? I'm always delighted to be able to help somebody or guide somebody, because I really appreciate the managers and the people who did that for me. So it's only right that you would pass that along, I think.
Yeah. And I think it leads to success for the whole business, doesn't it? When you give give that back and receive it.
Yeah, it does. I think that within Medtronic, there's a lot of opportunities through a lot of different programs to develop. We give scholarships to employees for like pursue S&T degrees, science and technology degrees, and there's a lot of sponsorship for business degrees. And I think that those employees who come through those routes, they already know the culture. They're already embedded within Medtronic. And for me personally, I'm very grateful to Medtronic that they have supported me in my career and, have given me a good life for myself and my family.
Probably very loyal as well, having gone through that. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Catherine, how has your journey been? I think from speaking earlier, slightly different, definitely.
Yeah, definitely different. I suppose I had probably a little more of a traditional journey into STEM where I am today, but I did mechanical engineering in college and I would consider myself a very accidental engineer. I went into engineering, I happened into it, not deliberately, but...
How did you happen into it?
So I would have...
How does that happen?
When I was in school, I always had thought, I wasn't quite as smart as everybody else because I loved maths, but I wasn't drawn to English and Irish and other geography and other subjects that everybody else seemed to love. So in primary school, I was in an all-girls school, so I kind of felt like I was a bit odd that I tell my mother only had maths homework because that's what I liked doing.
Yeah.
And then, as I went into secondary school, it was a mixed secondary school, and I then kind of saw that, I'm actually really good at maths, and it wasn't something that was maybe pointed out to me in the past that I'm not stupid. I actually am good at maths, I'm good at science. And one of the key subjects that I did, and myself and Anne talked about it previously, is technical drawing. So my mother was very passionate. She got to try technical drawing. She didn't get to do it for her leaving cert, but she got to try it along the way. And she was like, you'll love this. She could see that I liked maths, I liked problem solving, and that whole kind of logical thinking was kind of in my wheelhouse as a child. So going into secondary school, she said, you have to do this subject. And I'm like, no, I don't like drawing. I'm no good at drawing. I don't like it. And she's like, no, trust me, you'll love this. And I did.
Good on her.
I absolutely loved technical drawing. And it was only that she had the opportunity to try it herself.
But she knew it was different.
She knew that was a subject that I would like. So she really supported me, and pushed me to look at that and not maybe get drawn into home economics and other traditional subjects, even though I love cooking and still enjoy doing that. There was other subjects to try out, and I even found myself being, for the leaving cert, being the only female in the class with a bunch of lads, and I was kind of giving a few grinds on the side to a few of the lads in my class because I really enjoyed it, and
came naturally to you.
It came naturally to me. It was fun and everything else. So that's kind of what took me into that kind of side of things. Like I did physics, chemistry, obviously honours maths and technical drawing. So, and when I was in secondary school, it was in the late 80s, and my career guidance teacher said to me, secretarial work is
nursing or teaching.
No, not even that. I wasn't even going to reach.
You were just going.
It's like secretarial work is very appropriate for it. And I'm just like, does she know me? I'm like, not a hope. So again, my mother kind of sat down with me when we were looking at subject choices, and technical drawing was just like the bomb for me, loved it. So I ended up doing a mechanical electrical draftsmanship course initially. So that's what kind of I started into college with. And I soon then discovered that I didn't want to be the person that was handed the specs to draw up for somebody else for the rest of my career. And then just kind of progressed into doing mechanical engineering. So I feel like I'm very accidental where I ended up, but there was a path to that accidental getting into mechanical engineering. And again, really enjoyed the course and loved the math side of it. Obviously there was a really high maths element to it. Enjoyed that. Some of the practical hands-on stuff I veered away from a little bit. Afraid of setting my hair on fire when I was doing welding, etc. But enjoyed that. And that's kind of what led me into that. And then once I graduated and finished college, it was actually during the time when there was Morrison visas, being, the lottery for that was going on. So I ended up in the US then for the first 10 years of my career, going over there and kind of not knowing the dynamics of the work over there, etc. I kind of took a safe bet and went for a multinational. So I ended up working for General Motors. So I'm like, okay, that's a brand, brand recognition. To when I was going home after 2 years in my head, that I'd at least have a company behind me that people would have heard of. So I ended up spending 7 years with General Motors doing various different engineering roles, from industrial engineering to manufacturing engineering, and then got very focused into lean principles, etc. So took that and kind of ran with that for a few years. And after about 5 or 6 years, I started to kind of feel that okay, really passionate about what we do as engineers. But there's more to life than car parts. I like my cars, but like, you know, when there's a machine down, you're under so much pressure, and the plant manager is coming down and looking at his watch, are we going to miss the shipment, and all these kind of things. I was like, okay, there has to be something more fulfilling than car parts if I'm going to be working this hard and feeling under this much pressure. So that's what led us, myself and both my husband, to move into a medical device. So we started around the same time applying for jobs in both pharma and medical device, because we could see, like, you know, that's kind of a therapy that you were helping a patient, and, you know, there was more purpose than a nice shiny car at the end of it. So that's kind of what led us to that. And that brought me to Medtronic. I started in Medtronic in the US. I worked in the site in Santa Rosa, which was our vascular headquarters at the time. Worked there for about 3 years, and then got the opportunity to move to Galway. That brought me, after 10 years in the States, brought me back to Ireland, and been back 20 years since. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Quite an interesting journey as well, though. Yeah. I think when I'm talking about your journey, I kept saying to myself, how many women were doing draftsmanship when you did your course? And were you the only one?
So all the way through college, there was me and one other. So when I was doing the draftsmanship, there was one other female in the course. And then when I went into engineering, there was one other female in that course. And to this day, we're great friends.
I was just going to say, did you stay in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. We went through the pain of it together. We have the scars and everything else. We kind of clicked from the get-go, and we both married guys out of the course that were in different years than us, but we do have very strong roots back to our connection in college. And when I was in the States, she would have come over, and she moved to the States for a bit as well, and would have visited each other, and that. Yeah, very strong connections get built up through those times.
Yeah, through the camaraderie of just the two of you in that. But it's good that it's lovely to see that still be in touch today from that early start. Yeah. And I think it's really good. We see it changing, and it is changing. There's a lot more females going into courses like that. But I love the fact that your mum was your biggest advocate behind it all, and she was able to encourage you, because when you're that young, it's not easy to be different and pick the courses that you're the only female doing technical graphics. I just think it's a testament to your family life and what you've come from, which is lovely to see. Looking back at your childhood, we know the defining moment with you, Catherine, was definitely your mom, and kind of pushing you to pursue what you really enjoyed and what she knew you'd love from your love of maths and that. How about you, Anne? Because it was quite a different route for you, so it probably wasn't a defining one.
Myself and Catherine were talking earlier, so like, even though when I was young, I didn't really know what an engineer was. It wasn't a career that was in front of me. But I loved maths, actually. In school, all the way from national school up, I really adored maths. And then when I went into secondary school, our school made the decision the year I became a first year to allow females, or the girl students, to do technical graphics. So I did it for the junior cert, and I loved it. It was my subject, like problem solving, logical thinking, and it's really maths. When I think back now, it's so similar to maths. The two subjects are so aligned, and I loved it and got on well in the junior cert. And me and three of the other girls in the class, our teacher loved us. He was really positive about girls starting to do the subject. He was really supportive of us to do it to Leaving Cert, but unfortunately the school had made the decision to put the technical graphics class on at the same time as the French subject, which was our only language, because you had as a first year, we made the decision not to do German because it was on against technical graphics. So unfortunately we weren't able to do the technical graphics to Leaving Cert. But that teacher and my maths teacher had a big impact on my decision to go into computers, because in first year, both of those subjects introduced me to computers. I hadn't, we had no computer at home. I didn't really know much about computers. And I remember thinking, these are fascinating things. We were able to do CAD drawings on them. And I remember loving them. And, we were allowed to go in kind of at break times to play around with them and try them out. So those two teachers had that influence on me. And that's what I ultimately pursued in college, was that computers. And thinking back now, there was no internet. Imagine. There was no internet. It was just, you could program a little bit. And I remember the maths teacher had us having little stick men walking across the screen. And then when I went on to do IT, it's logic, it's coding, it's maths, really. I love that. So I think that was what drove me towards sciencey subject, or IT, was those two At the same time, but independent things being introduced to computers, I definitely was fascinated by them and what they could provide.
I still think that some girls think that STEM is more a boys' subject. I have 2 boys and a girl myself, and I still think, I even see it in them, and I love to encourage the engineering bit. And she's already going, no, I'll be a teacher. And he's already going, I'll be an engineer. They're kind of already choosing that they think they're the paths they should take. Why do you think that is?
I've gone into schools as part of your STEM programme. We've a Women in Science and Engineering group in Medtronic, and we've gone out to schools to talk about them. I'm really trying to target the schools at like 5th and 6th class before they make their subject choices, because not every school has those tasters, which I would love to see even for my own sons when they were starting secondary school, to taste every subject. So they have to make decisions early on. And and like you said earlier, it's hard to kind of break away from what everybody else is doing and tradition and find that path. So I love talking to young students and getting them to think, do you like solving problems? It's not like explaining what an engineer is. It's kind of like, do you like problem solving? Do you like trying to get to the root of why something's happening and delving into opening up those thoughts in their head? I was delighted when I was doing a careers fair locally in Galway with a secondary school, and I had a student that was thinking about doing nursing or biomedical science. And I'm like, well, do you like maths? Do you like problem solving? And then I met her father afterwards to say that she put down biomedical engineering as her top choice and her CEO after talking to me. So I was just kind of like, oh, yes.
I win.
For Catherine. One win here. But then on the flip side, I actually pretty much forced both my sons to do technical graphics. And they hated it.
Oh, so there you go.
Because it's actually changed from, it was only when my youngest was in junior cert and I was talking to his teacher and he was saying like, oh, his freehand now needs a bit of work and whatever. And I'm like, but what about the logical thinking and problem solving? And he was looking at me kind of going like, that's not what the subject's about, that it's changed a lot. Yeah, so I only realised that after forcing both of them. And neither of them want to do for their leaving cert. But it's the environment you're in, I think. It's, the exposure you have. So when I can, I love to talk about just problem solving, opening your mind to, if you like science and if you like math, it doesn't have to be one path versus the other. But even when you get into college, you can move, quite a bit, and you can go on and do advanced degrees, etc. That'll take you a different path. No more than Anne was saying, I went on and did a Master's of Science in Management Technology, which really brought me down more of a project management path in my career also. It's kind of like making sure people are open to the opportunities. And how do we get the career guidance? Like, I was given very bad advice. How do we get career guidance more in tune with possibilities of somebody's leaning one way or another, that this may be an opportunity for them to explore?
And I love the fact of doing something a little bit more generic if you're not sure, that you can move in different paths, as you said. You can pivot when you find something you like. And even later on, as you said, look, you've done it, Anne.
Yeah, and I think that I definitely have a recognition now that your career is long. I think when I was starting looking at college and like what type of career I would have, I nearly thought, well, if I'm a teacher, I'm a teacher, or if I'm a nurse, you're a nurse. Whereas I think now, and especially in, big multinational companies, there's so many careers that you can have within the one organisation or within the one career. My friends say to me a bit like, oh my God, 22 years in Medtronic, how have you stayed there? And I've had so many different jobs, different roles, different teams. So even though it's the same company, the same culture, it does and it has felt very different and enriching. And like, I'm constantly challenged to learn new things, learn new skills. And I've done follow-on education. I've done 2 different executive courses with MIT. So that broadens your thinking as well. And so you're always evolving, I think. It's not a job. And that's where
so you're with Medtronic, but you could have been with 5 or 6 different companies in that time from the roles you've done. Yeah. And equally you, Catherine. Yeah.
After returning to Ireland, I was about 5 years with Medtronic when I started having start to my family. I made the decision that I was going to leave the workforce at that point in time also, because there was just too many pulls on me, and I'm like, I'm all in what I do in
I can tell.
I tried to do. So for me, it was important that I was lucky and fortunate enough that I could step out of the workforce for a number of years. When I started thinking about going back, it was Medtronic I went back to too. So I joined back in 2001, but I'm about 15 years in total, so not quite as long as Anne here, but have that culture is a great culture that we have.
And having stepped out of the workforce for a few years to raise your family, do you see that as an advantage or a disadvantage, or is it neither? Nor, does that depend on the person?
I think it's an advantage. I think it's a luxury to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
First and foremost. I think raising children full time certainly brought a lot of more patience. I would have been certainly a different person in my career before I had children. That kind of like, let's keep moving, let's get things done. But it taught me patience, and there's certain skills then that I brought back. Now, re-entering the workforce was quite daunting after being out of it for quite a number of years. But, I think that I still had connections into Medtronic. My husband works at Medtronic also, and folks in R&D that I would have worked with previously reached out, and when certain roles were coming up, going like, oh, are you interested in a role again? And I'm like, oh, not now. Eventually I'm kind of going, I have to say yes eventually, or I'll stop asking, and then I'll be forever. But talking about changing careers, like, when I was off, I thought about, going back and doing teaching, and that was maybe a better lifestyle for having a young family at the time. But I think my passion brought me back to engineering and to Medtronic.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. I definitely agree. I think you're a different person before and after kids sometimes. And I think time management is definitely something you learn
absolutely
really well when you go back with your hard stops and your drops and collects. But it's important, and it gives you empathy, doesn't it? And
it does.
Sometimes makes you a better leader because you understand what we always say about park it at the door, but you can't do that all the time.
You have to be able to bring your full self in the door if you have had a bad morning.
Absolutely. Like having a young family, it definitely gives you a lot more empathy for folks that are coming back from maternity leave, and even the dads, they struggle with leaving their partner and baby, newborn at home and coming back, and they come back with a different perspective after their father or somebody coming back from maternity leave. And that's one thing that I think we've progressed a lot in Medtronic. When I was going out on maternity leave initially, I had a lot of pushed a lot of buttons to kind of bring in some flexibility around what was expected of me coming back, etc. And then after I left and came back a number of years later, a lot of those things were in place, which was great to see that we progressed, our thinking about.
Yeah. And that's the type of company you want to go back to then. Absolutely. When they're in place. Yeah. So it made your decision easier than going down that teaching route. Do you think leadership styles evolve with age, or is it our core values that remain consistent?
I think they definitely evolve with age. Like I talked about there, even having more patience around different things and setting expectations. And as your role changes in an organisation, also you're less of the doer and more of the delegator. So that transition into setting the expectations appropriately and making sure that as you're delegating work, everybody knows what's expected of them, so that there's no confusion and there's no kind of misalignment along the way. And I think that comes with maturity a little bit, that you can kind of take a step back and kind of see that there's that progression and where you need to lean in and coach somebody and maybe set the boundaries or expectations, and where you can let somebody figure out their own path. I think when I was younger in my career, I was probably a little more type A and wanted everything done a certain way, and found it hard to let go of the reins.
It is the hardest thing to do.
It is. But over time, you see that as your role grows and you progress, that you can't get it all done yourself. So you have to be able to trust, and you have to be able to communicate well and set the expectations well. So, but I think the core traits of wanting to get things done and seeing action and seeing things, I think the core traits are always there. But I've gone through multiple roles where I was in project management, and then I spent the last 7+ years in functional management, which is very different. So, there's less milestones that you have to kind of hit, and I've just gone back into a project management role, so I'm actually feeling the energy and the buzz from the project again. So it's nice to be able to step into different types of roles throughout your career as well. And the people development side that I would have focused on over the last number of years, bringing that into my project management role now, so that I can help the team develop and see where their careers can go through the work they're doing on the project, rather than having to look elsewhere, etc.
And more probably through mentorship than being their functional manager, which is nice. You can bring that in through. How about you, Anne?
Yeah,
Do you agree?
I agree. I think that we as people evolve, so then our leadership style is going to evolve over time. I think that as a strategy person, that's my functional perspective is, delighted to hear Kat saying like setting the goals, being really clear. I think that that's a great way as a leader to start off, that you're really clear about what we're here to achieve. And I think then really good communication is important. It's like all good relationships, you have to make sure people are clear about what you expect from them, but then also that you listen, that you're there to support people. And I think once those two things are in place, you can trust your team. They can trust you, that psychological safety, that everybody is here to do a good job, and that I listen when people are coming to me with roadblocks, projects, and I'm there to enable them and help them get through those things. Yeah, so I think like definitely as a younger manager, you're more impatient, and like it is a skill to learn how to trust and delegate, I think, over time. So I think, yeah, definitely we have to evolve. And even as I think now, in my career where I'm working with people of a younger generation, they have different needs than we had.
Definitely.
They have different expectations than we had. So we absolutely have to pivot to that for them so that they can really fulfill their potential within Medtronic.
To them.
Yeah, it really, to me anyway, it has changed. And even if I think going back maybe 7 or 8 years ago, thinking about your team being completely remote from you, or majority of my team are in the US. So it's all online, it's all remote. So how you manage in that situation is very different than what you do when you're around a table together frequently. Build a relationship is different in that method. So I think as work changes, as people change, we have to change.
And what's core to that difference from having them right beside you to being remote? Is that the trust, and is that the, I suppose, clear boundaries and really good communication?
Yeah, I think that's like, for me, I'm always going back to kind of that, making sure everyone's really clear on what we're here to do, those goals and why we're doing it. Like we're not doing it because somebody more senior said so. There's a really good reason. It's driving something that the company wants to achieve at a global level. So I think having that really clear, and then that communication. So a lot of the time I'm communicating with people who maybe English isn't their first language. They're in a different culture, like from a country perspective, they're in the US or they could be in Mexico. And so you're trying to make sure that your communication bypasses that. It's as understood in Ireland as it is in the US or Mexico. And I think that you're listening as well. Like you're always listening to hear that they've heard what you've said. Those are that's probably the big thing. And then like I'm always trying to look for opportunity to build that rapport and build that trust in them, my team, in me, but also me and my team. Like you're always trying to build that rapport, that they feel like I'm there to support them in achieving the goals of the team, that it's us all in it together as opposed to individuals. And like when you're spread out, that can be a bit more of a challenge, I think.
Yeah.
But I think as Irish people, we work well, like globally, we build relationships really nicely.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's something that comes a little bit more natural to us, but the listening's a huge part of it as well.
As you mature a bit, like you've more, I suppose, experiences to draw on.
Yes.
And you're also hopefully at getting to the stage where you've less self-doubt because you've more of those experiences behind you, and in roles then where you get to see more of the bigger picture. I've been in global roles on and off throughout the years as well, and being willing to be vulnerable with your team too, that especially when you're going into a new role that's different or something totally outside your comfort zone, being vulnerable and letting the team know this is what I plan to do, but I need your help, so that they get to contribute and input into the direction of the team overall as well. So
isn't that great though? Because like if you're vulnerable, there's no better way to show them that it's okay when they come up against a challenge, that they can also say, you know what, I don't know this, I need help or I need assistance. Because otherwise if we come in and are all like, we know exactly what to do,
I've seen everything,
I can tackle every problem, it doesn't leave space for that real, like I'm hitting a roadblock here, I've got a problem, can I talk to you about it?
I think that leads lovely into the fact that you spoke about the next generations and differences that are important to them, but knowing you're coming into that safe environment where it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to try something, and understand that not everyone has all the answers all the time, but together we'll figure it out. Because even though they do have different values, everyone still wants to succeed and be counted for.
Everybody wants to do their best every day.
Yeah.
We show up to make a difference and to do the best we can every day. So just being willing to share if you need help with something, or go ask the right questions rather than trying to figure it all out yourself. That's the environment we try to create, especially in R&D. There's so much tribal knowledge on certain things that you can always point somebody that's done or tried it before and that's willing to help.
And you're both in Medtronic a long time. And do you see it becoming more of a level playing field now? Do you see it's more of a balance now? It definitely always should be the best person for the job. But is there a more diverse interview panel to choose from when jobs come up now?
Yeah, like it's still hard to find certain levels of female engineers. Like I was in a functional role for about 7+ years, and I always want to make sure that we are getting the best candidates. And if there's an opportunity to try and make sure and maybe push back a little bit and say, no, have we really done the search right? That we have all the best candidates coming to the table? Because I know that even for myself, it's the idea of having to tick most of the boxes before. I think that's
your type A, Catherine.
I'm the right person to take on a role. We need to give ourselves a break at times and be willing to put ourselves forward. I remember before I went to the US, I got some great advice from a talk in university. And it's like, when you go into your interview, go in there knowing that if you don't impress them, you'll never see those people again. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
I love it. Yeah.
Because and I was going to the States, like the chance of meeting anybody that I interviewed in front of, I was just like, so I actually had to take that on board, because I wouldn't have been the person to kind of say, oh, I can do this or I can do that. Like I wouldn't put myself forward as such. I'd be like, oh, I'm happy now in the background, and taking that mentality. But back to your question, a good representation of what our management team looks like doing the interviews.
Balance is there.
The balance is there from both sides of the table, that we're trying to get the most diverse pool we can, and we're reaching as far afield as we can. For Ireland is a very attractive place to come, and anybody in the medical device sector knows Galway is a hub for that activity. So trying to kind of put out the wide net to draw the best talent that we can. But what coming out of college, it's much easier than it used to be to get graduates, to get a nice balance of graduates, And
it will take time for it to get to the top level in the companies.
And it's like,
but it's happening.
It's happening. I've definitely seen like there's more than 2 girls coming out a year. But like, in certain sectors though, I still think like mechanical, it's more than like the 2%. But I think biomedical has been a brilliant addition, working with the universities to make sure that the curriculum is what we need to see coming out and with the graduates coming into us. But like it really has opened up that pipeline of diverse set of talent coming.
And it's education at the beginning, as you said. It's not do engineering or do this. It's like, what do you like doing? Do you like the problem solving and the maths and the figuring things out, open things up? And like, there's multiple different types of engineering. So there's a path for anybody that's interested. There is, exactly. So I think we've talked a lot about the education, the evolving, the advice you'd give to our younger kids or our younger selves, even if we were to come out again. Is there anything that you would, as maybe a message that you'd like to leave to young girls or even young guys that want to get into engineering now? What would that be?
I would say it's have a broad mind on what it is. Like I went into it blind. I had no idea what I was getting into. I don't know if somebody had told me if I would have backed away or kept going. But having a broad perspective of what it is, it's a great career. You can go anywhere in the world with engineering, and there's so many different types of engineering out there now and so many opportunities. But I would say if you do like to solve problems, engineers are the problem solvers of the organisation. But also be willing to take on the challenge, that not everything is going to go perfectly. Not everything's going to go, no career goes in a straight line. There's lots of turns and swings and roundabouts along the way. Engineering can be a great career at the end of the day, and STEM in general.
I was going to say, like the presentation I was at recently, we had students in from an outreach program in Medtronic, and one of the directors who was presenting to the group shows this great visual of, engineering and how broad it is, and like basically from your electric kettle in the morning, like to the chair you sit on, everything is science, technology, engineering and maths. Like touches every part of our lives. So I think that my advice would be to look what's around you, be inquisitive as to the different careers. I think if I look back, I just didn't understand all of the careers that are out there. And I think that I have young children now, and it's like I can see that they have people coming into their schools talking about different careers. I think that, you know, if they stay inquisitive and not try to limit yourself as to what's for me and what's not for me, because whether that's gender or whatever, for whatever reason, that you're as inquisitive and kind of cast your net as wide as possible for as long as possible. And then know that there's nothing that's fatal that you can't come back from. Try things that interest you. And if it's not for you, you can try something else again.
Be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
It's not all the time.
But not one person has all the answers and has it all figured out. We're all figuring it out as we go on the fly half the time as well. So give yourself grace as well along the way, and expect that you know it all straight
at 16
up.
or 17.
Exactly,
Exactly. It's okay not to know what you want to do next. Yeah.
And I think your piece earlier where you said that if you're not sure, try to stay more general. I think that's a great actual. There's lots of, a part of my role, I am responsible for our partnership, our signature innovation partnership with the University of Galway. So like I see now, and I had been through college there myself, but working with them now, I can see the amount of different disciplines they have and how you can go in quite general, and then as you go on, as you said, you can do your advanced degrees and masters in once you know and you have confidence.
It's like a process of elimination then, isn't it? And you know what you like.
Yeah. So I think like through working with university, and I nearly think that the universities are slightly different than when I went in, or maybe I just didn't know how to maneuver them. Like I was in commerce and you were kind of in that building and that was what you did. But whereas now we work with the Ideas Lab in the university, which is like an entrepreneurial and innovation hub, and they're fantastic, and it's cross-discipline and it's interesting. And, you know, I can imagine as a young student going in there now and you're getting to work with students from different disciplines, how that would stretch your horizons and really inspire you to maybe follow different tracks. So I think that would be my advice, is that try to stay curious and throw your hat in and don't be afraid to try things outside the four walls of what you've kind of signed up for.
I think that's a fabulous place to end. I think it's been really enlightening and really interesting journey. And I love hearing the stories and backgrounds of people and the pivots. But thanks so much. It was great.
Thank you, Deirdre.
Thank you, Deirdre.
Once again, that's a wrap on season 3 of High Flyers in STEM, Greatness Has No Gender. Huge thank you to Medtronic's Catherine Clery and Anne Grealish for closing out the season with a powerful conversation on leadership, inclusion and innovation. Thank you for listening and for supporting the movement to elevate women in STEM. If you'd like to share your story or get involved, visit us at hero.ie. A special mention to our sponsors Finero and their team for their continued support and sponsorship. And please stay tuned to see what's coming next from the team in Hero.